This is A World on Purpose.
A purposeful life is the most important kind and the most valuable kind of life.
Every choice that we make makes a difference, for better or worse.
I loved walking in a village and seeing the before and after.
This is the podcast dedicated to those humans choosing to live larger by working for the greater good. And these are their stories. Stories of hope and of true change that come from living on purpose.
What if you were to suddenly say there are no challenges, there are only opportunities?
Regardless of where you come from, your financial identity shouldn't determine where you end up in life.
I'm your host, Alyssa Fisher-Harris, and my hope is that my inspiring guests will take you on an introspective journey that helps you tap into your own pivot to purpose, bringing greater meaning to your life. Welcome to A World on Purpose. Hey, everybody. Thanks for coming back to A World on Purpose with me, Alyssa Fisher-Harris, your ever consummate host of championing living a life on purpose. You know, I love to bring these people on that are doing these incredible things I talk about constantly, whether it's, something inherent in the product that they make that's helping them live their purpose, or whether it's something that their company is designed to do to help other companies live purpose. And a lot of times when I speak with people, there's kind of a common thread or a common theme. It's not always the case, but a lot of times the idea of living a purpose-driven life, of doing something larger than yourself, of doing something to lift humanity actually comes out of having your own adversity. And so today's guest is going to speak about that. You guys who have been listening for a while now and are watching on YouTube for a while and knowing that was sort of my background. Today's guest, Natalie Rekstad, is pretty phenomenal. Her background also comes from having adversity and understanding, like I did at a very young age, what I call the perils of humanity, and how that level of suffering and uncertainty and fear really drove inside of her at a young age the desire to want to do something good. However, she talks about how it didn't start out that way. In her life, because she grew up in poverty, she didn't want to ever be in poverty. So a lot of her work was originally channeled into like high strategic marketing, and she calls it soul sucking work that she did for years to make sure she could put herself in a position where she would never have to fear lack again, which is really real for people. I think that's an important thing for people to understand, that that's okay too. Out of that, though, she'll talk about in the interview how she founded her company called Fox Philanthropy. And it's an amazing strategy firm that really created sort of this blueprint for nonprofits to understand how they can accelerate their own giving, their own philanthropy, their own work. And it's really an open source thing that she's created, and they advise and they connect and they do incredible things. So I'm really excited to have Natalie here today. We met through an organization that I've talked about quite a bit on the show called Opportunity Collaboration. There's several of my guests have been on that have been part of that ecosystem. And again, if you haven't seen the episode with Topher and Jorian Wilkins, please go back and learn about what we call the OC, the Unconference. But today you're going to learn about Natalie, and I'm just thrilled to have her on. She's such an inspiring person and just so real and down to earth and relatable. And I think you're going to find that too. So thank you for joining me as always. And let's get into the interview. We'll see you there. Good day, good evening, and good afternoon, everyone, wherever you are in the world. You know me. I'm your host, Alyssa Fisher-Harris, of our little show here called A World on Purpose. And you go by now, if you've been listening and watching long enough, this is the show where we love to bring these incredible stories of the people I call the purpose change-making heroes that are out there living their lives with purpose, for purpose, and on purpose, trying to just channel all of their skills, talents, and life stories into doing something for the greater good. And so today I'm really excited, and I say that all the time, and you probably get tired of hearing it, but I'm going to keep saying it because it's true. I'm very lucky that I get to bring these incredible humans into my world and be able to shine a light on their stories. And so today I have an amazing woman here. Her name is Natalie Rekstad. She's going to correct me if I said that wrong, hopefully. And she's the founder and CEO of an incredible company, truly making measurable, tangible difference in the impact and purpose space. It's called Fox Philanthropy. And I'm going to let her tell you all about that. But before we do, let me please interview the gorgeous and ever amazing Natalie Rekstad.
Oh, thank you, Alyssa. It's so great to be here. I appreciate her inviting me.
Yeah. And did I say your last name right?
Yeah, Rekstad.
Rekstad. Okay. What's the origin of that? I'm curious.
Norwegian. I am part Viking.
Wow. Cool.
And I own that. Yeah.
Is there something specific about being a Viking that we should know?
Ooh, yes. Level of ferocity is pretty, although I'm 56% Irish. So also the Celtic female warriors were also incredible. So I get it from both sides. And I think that drives a lot of my ability to just keep going in the face of adversity. That's
great. Well, we have so much in common. I can't wait to get into this conversation. And that happens to be one of them too, the Irish Celtic background. So I'm really excited to speak with you. Natalie, you and I have been living our lives, really working for years and years in the impact space. And I'm really, really curious for everybody to get to learn more about how you got here and what was sort of the impetus for you getting into this purpose-driven life. And a little bit of it, I want it to be really personal as much as you're willing to share, because I've read some stories about you, and you and I have something very common actually in channeling our lives into what we call these vehicles for good. And a lot of times people in the impact space, it isn't always the case, but in the impact space, people will kind of go through something really challenging, some adversity, and that ends up sort of kickstarting or igniting this desire to live a purpose-driven life. And so you and I have very similar backgrounds in growing up with some serious adversity. And so if you're willing to share, I like to talk about those things for people so they understand how they can, choose to not live in that space and be able to channel adversity into vehicle for good. So please tell us about Natalie.
Yeah. No, thank you. And yes, I know your journey also is fraught with a great deal. And I find that those of us who've gone through a significant amount of suffering, we cannot bear witness to suffering without taking action. Mm-hmm. And so many people who end up in the healing space, and I would consider those of us in the social sector healers, but we really, our deepest passions often spring from our deepest wounds. And so kind of healing and channeling some of those wounds into agency and impact. I think it's sort of a concurrent journey to not only heal the world, but heal ourselves concurrently. It's sort of this companion and also a life of meaning. I can't think of anything more significant or rewarding. In fact, I think that latest studies, pursuit of happiness is sort of our right as American citizens. But in fact, the most significant lives are those of meaning, not necessarily of just happiness. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I feel as though from a very early age, I was able to really not have to sit with heartbreak, but had to by, out of a necessity to a great extent. And also this is an era where it is similar, you're younger than I, but an age where kids were really feral. Mm-hmm. And so we were able to, just kind of get our own needs met however we could. And there's a lot of skills and ferocity and can do that comes out of that I think the current generation of kids don't really have that advantage. I call my upbringing sort of an unusual advantage. Not everyone's had my advantage. Of that, I love that. Of coming through some of those things. Mm-hmm.
Okay, are you willing to share a little bit about what that childhood was like for you?
Well, sure. Yes. My only hesitation was just, my mother, single mom, 5 kids under 5, left my father when she was still in her 20s. Mm-hmm. So, and we were on government assistance and food stamps and free lunches and all of those things. But I just want to be so sensitive to the fact that she was so heroic in how she cared for us and her incredible work ethic. All five of us have a tremendous work ethic thanks to her. And so being on government assistance and being in struggle and some of the environments that weren't that ideal, it's also countered with the fact that she worked so hard and was in college full time and working jobs to lift us out. But I'll also name that, first of all, American poverty is nothing like the developing world poverty. Yeah. unless you are homeless. And then that, right?
Yeah.
In your experience. So I didn't have that parallel. I can't imagine what it would be to walk in your shoes. Mm-hmm. But I will say it was far more for me, and was the emotional poverty of really having a mother who needed to work and who was very driven to get a degree so she could provide for her family appropriately. And I think that's a huge cancer around kind of how the system is set up not only for the women who are in tremendous struggle and missing it, missing so much of their raising their children, but the kids are missing it, and it becomes an intergenerational thing. And I don't want to think about my therapy bills over the years, trying to right. all of that and make it mean something that actually is positive. And I do have an incredible mindset about that. I'm profoundly grateful for some of the advantages of coming up in that way, but it's not something I would wish on any future generation, for sure.
Right. And thank you for your vulnerability to share that, because I understand the sensitivity around, wanting to honor your parent for doing the best they could in the situation and with the tools that they had, especially when they were really young. And, so I get that and I appreciate it. And the reason I completely identify, my dad is my hero, and I constantly thank him and tell him, he could have left when people have left situations for much less. And so thank you for sharing that. The reason I wanted you to was because of exactly what you said, which was the emotional poverty that comes out of adversity and the understanding of how even in this first world, when we are experiencing lack, that it is challenging, and it does sort of set the precedent in the mind of someone like you and myself, of where you said, we cannot stand to see anyone else suffer like this. And let's just be clear, suffering is relative to everyone, and there's no comparison, right? I mean, you've seen that. Yes. And yet the body registers trauma, whether it's rape, whether it's abandonment, neglect, abuse. So our interior lives can look very, very similar to humanity across the globe. Our exterior lives look very different, and we're well resourced to get help that we need. And therefore, kind of that's the responsibility then, to recognize and be profoundly grateful for the fact that we're able to even be in this conversation about how do we pay this forward in a way, because all communities to my mind are incredibly resource rich, maybe not financially, but resource rich, but we have the advantages as, the beautiful thing about having incredible work ethic and ferocity is, as I was coming up in the corporate world, I had greater and greater and greater resources to get the supports I needed to heal and move forward. And also living in Boulder, Colorado all those years, every holistic modality that's out there, I employed, because I'm not a big fan of meds and I'm an athlete, and I'm a fan of meds when it's totally necessary or sort of like a crisis point. But but having those resources to access all of that, that's something that is an extraordinary advantage. So again, our interior lives can look similar. Trauma can land similarly. The body can register it similarly, but how we're resourced to move through it and heal and then pay it forward it looks very different in the US. Yeah, I agree. And to that point, then, that was sort of something that it really ignited this desire in you to want to put your best foot forward and channel your ideas, your networks, your legacy into doing something really amazing. So you were in marketing. That was sort of some of your background, and you've been able to leverage that incredible talent, skill set to develop this incredible company that you've created called Fox Philanthropy. And can you talk a little bit about how that came about and what it is, so that people know and understand what you're doing? Because it's pretty impressive what you're pulling off right now.
Oh my God, I can't believe what we get to do. Well, first of all, I have to say, my corporate career, I came up in the 80s, do more, be more, have more, greed is good. And growing up on, with a little bit of financial lack, I was very focused upon like empire building. So I didn't come to like so my first career was not around impact. However, concurrently, I was always volunteering.
Yeah.
My heart of service arrived very, 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 very young. So without fail throughout my life, I have a very philanthropic heart. Philanthropy in the true sense of the word, obviously, love of humankind. And so, but what was good about the corporate career, I left in my mid-30s to start my own nonprofit, is it gave me the tools that I needed to be able to do the work I'm doing now. I definitely call it my curriculum. Part of my soul curriculum was to be in a soul-sucking corporate environment in sales and marketing. And let's face it, fundraising is sales. And then, when running the nonprofit, over half of my my role was raising the funds so that it would be successful. And then I ran it as a business, so that's another piece that made it successful. But so really, Black Fox Philanthropy is the convergence of three roots. One is the corporate career, sales, marketing, that level of empire building, understand what it takes. Back then, it was empire building for my own security. Now it's empire building for impact. So it looks very, very different. And then, my journey as a nonprofit leader, and then my journey as well as I became, into greater and greater financial resources, that journey as a philanthropist. So Black Fox Philanthropy is really a convergence of all three paths. And starting it as a funder also gave me an incredible amount of freedom to be open source, to make our content available to organizations that could never afford us. Pretty agnostic about, who we serve, as long as it's serving the planet, humanity, moving it forward. Formal engagement paid. For like here, this is, you don't have the resources, but this is what we've created for organizations like yours. And so true plug and play so that they can go out and have this, not necessarily the skills necessarily, but at least the choreography so they can get started and how to approach funders in a funder-centric, clear, concise, compelling, funder-centric way, not mission. Integrity of the mission, of course, but just giving them what they need so that they can secure the money to do their really important work in the world. But fortunately, we also get to work with these extraordinary organizations and leaders around the world. In fact, so we know each other through opportunity collaboration. And I always love talking to OC kindreds, but I mentioned earlier, one of the things that I really appreciate about you is how you lead with curiosity and how you've leveraged your story and your curiosity and all these things into a platform like this to help sector leaders around the world. So bravo you on how you're channeling your your journey, your soul curriculum. And I do think Black Fox Philanthropy is one of my soul assignments. I'm very clear. It's absolutely a spiritual practice is doing this work. And callings call for us to grow into them. So when I started it, it was like a monkey knife fight. I really was, I was working with, much larger organizations like Women's Foundation of Colorado, collaborating with the Denver Art Museum. So that was easy. That was home base. But when we pivoted to global, because I was exposed to opportunity collaboration and these unbelievable leaders, it was, callings call for you to grow into them. I'm going to have to be a really quick study. And to learn how to ride a bike, you need a bike. So we did a few pro bono engagements. We had some capacity building grants where funders paid for our services to work with grantees. And we got up to speed fairly quickly. Plus, I have an over delivery Achilles heel. So we just, way went over.
Overachiever.
Learned so much. Where I wish we were a little tighter in the early years was around operations. I'm not an operations person, but now we're so tight. I quip that my leadership team has made me obsolete in my own company because everything's humming, everything's beautiful. Well, it enables me to do far more in the sector to kind of look up and go, what's the next level of impact? where am I called next? So anyway, I'm in an amazing position now, thanks to the leadership team, I have to say. I mean, I'll take credit for the culture, but the leadership team is actually keeping the wheels on the bus and going full gangbusters.
That's awesome.
It's so awesome.
Yeah. Well, it's nice when you can, when you're an overachiever, it's hard to actually let go of the reins a little bit and trust others to help. You can't do it alone. We know the adage, it takes a village, obviously is true, but that you had enough you've heard of founder syndrome. Sometimes it's hard to let go, especially when you're needing to make sure that everything is going to go right. Was that hard for you at all? Or
listen, I was giving it away with both hands. I am a delegating ninja.
Oh, that's awesome.
Oh my gosh. Well, because I have my zone of genius, and everyone on the team, they really, some are unicorns. They have multiple things that they can do brilliantly, but most of us are like, we have a role. We have what's uniquely ours to do within the organization. And we're still, we're young, we're agile, tremendous impact. But if you look at, the company, we're still very much evolving, growing, fairly rapidly. And so anyway, all of this to say, just hire really well, get out of the way. Delegating ninja is one of the things I live by. And the reality is they can do this work far better than I, at least on running. I'm no longer on the front lines to do client work. Because of COVID, I went on a strategy cleanse where I would go on, 12-month engagements and deep in the trenches. Where COVID, it was like we needed to pivot to rapid response, getting clients, in the sector what they needed as soon as possible. So wound those the strategy clients down to just focusing on core services that were going to be like instant quantum leaps forward for organizations in incredible sudden pain.
Yeah. We did that too. I think you also know, I don't just have this podcast. I'm Chief Impact Officer and storyteller for Fifth Element Group. And, several of my partners, obviously through OC and through other groups that you've been involved in. And same thing for us. It's like when you have an emerging company, especially when it's focused around impact specifically, it's going to ebb and flow and live and breathe and change and evolve. And I guess no business really starts for sure exactly where they thought they would. Everything evolves, but it seems to be that impact really shifts and change. And obviously COVID, that rapid response became like a global thing, So how did you take on that note? Let's talk for a second about that, because I'm curious. You've done such a good job basically creating like what you discussed as essentially a playbook, in essence, right, for nonprofits. How were you able to take that structure that you created for Black Fox and specifically help them also pivot with the COVID crisis? Because fundraising is tough as it is, let alone in the middle of a pandemic. What was that like?
So, where we showed up was who are the funders who, so we have a number of core services. Prospect research, who are the funders with a reasonable to high likelihood of funding you, particularly in this new landscape. Communications, how are you telling the story of how you're taking care of your communities, how you're taking care of your teams? People so focused on just serving the communities that they couldn't really focus on fundraising as much, and yet you don't want to go off a cliff. So how do we shore that up? And even just building capacity around how do we get the grants out the door and the letters of inquiry and really position them so that they can be funder facing and in conversations with funders versus like the weeks, the months, whatever it takes to even just get in front of a funder. So one of our core services, something that I think really sets us apart, is instant outreach. So, one of our team members' names is Kellen. So there's, Kellen at glasswing.org, Kellen at thinkequal.org, Kellen at buildchange.org. So we're showing up as an extension of their team to the meetings for the nonprofit leaders.
Very
and
cool.
We're advancing those relationships. And the more sophisticated funders, if they're aware of this, which no reason they would be unless they really know our model and know us, are like right on. Like the fact that this is really smart. We're less expensive in so many ways. We're coming in as a team of 5 or 6 where everyone's in their zone of genius versus having one person, because in that rapid response, you needed all hands on deck.
Mm-hmm.
And so to come in a really intense short-term way to build the infrastructure, get the momentum, get everything up and going as it mapped to COVID made all the difference for so many of our clients who really needed to just focus upon caring for their communities and fundraising, taking that off of their shoulders to a really great extent. And we're capacity building. So then when they're sort of graduating past us and they do get a playbook and all of that, then, it's something to maintain that versus the Herculean massive heavy lift of getting it up to that humming level with the assets like the 2-pager, the pitch deck, the grand check, those things. And a really strong infrastructure and landscape analysis of the funding landscape. But as well, we use Trello. And I won't get granular on all the services, but all of this to say, it's just, it's been really, really game changing. And we pinch ourselves all the time that we not only get to do this work, but get to be in community with these unbelievable leaders that you also know.
Yeah. It's wonderful too.
Yeah.
What?
Well, it was because of OC that I even pivoted to global. I was just like, what is this?
Interesting.
Who are these humans? Holy smokes. I went there kind of by accident. A friend/mentor encouraged me to go. And I was like, well, my personal philanthropy is around women and girls. And I work with, large institutions that are Colorado based. And she's like, well, it's just that poverty is underneath everything. It's under inequality. It's under lack of education and, filthy water and all of those things. She's like, just go. And it was interesting because I was, a week before I went to OC, I was having breakfast with a billionaire. And, this is one of those things where you're talking about, naming rights on this building and then to go to be at OC a week later. And it was like, wow, like Shofco in the Kabir slum and Z Foundation working in Nepal and I global grassroots, right? So there's conscious social change with these women in communities where rape was used as a tool of war, and they're becoming the spiritual leaders and the leaders of their communities. And it was just like, hands down, these are the leaders we want to serve. So we pivoted on a dime.
That's great. Yeah. And I will comment also a little bit more on opportunity collaboration. For anyone who's listening and missed the episode with the founders of Opportunity Collaboration, Topher and Jorian Wilkins.
Amazing.
Yeah. They created this incredible unconference, they call it, that is really bringing these global leaders together from every sector, every geography in the world and collaborating on helping end poverty. And so I was the same experience. My mind was so blown when I went there because you can be so focused on what you're doing in your area. And then all of a sudden what's going on in the world. And you're like, how can one person do all of it? But then to be in that group with all these change makers was so inspiring. And I love that was your pivot, that pivoted you to global, which is so cool. How long have you been doing Black Fox Philanthropy? Remind me, and knowing that, what have you seen in terms of the trends over the years, the changes?
Yeah. So in August, it'll be 8 years since started, 7 years since really was public facing with a website. I turned on the website like the day before I went to OC, but I had been working under the radar with other larger organizations in Colorado. And over the arc of that 8 years, the first OC, the Ebola crisis had broken out 2014. And so when I think back on just the rapid response and how central it was to the conversation at OC and how to, solve that. And of course, now we're in this pandemic. So it's sort of this extraordinary arc over the last 7 years. But, so over the arc of the last 7 years, I think more maybe more relevant at this point is more just the arc of the last year and a half about how things have shifted because of the pandemic, the issues around systemic racism and more. That's where I've seen such massive shifts in awakening, but also addressing some of the problems that, have been living in the shadows in plain sight all along. And only now people are really far more in the conversation, willing to get their nose bloodied around the systemic racism conversation, certainly. But even just looking at, how do we run these powerful social enterprises that are serving these vulnerable, already incredibly vulnerable communities? And how do we stay strong so that we can serve them through something like this? I mean, no one could have, I take that back. We could have seen this coming, but because so many folks didn't see it coming, they just weren't prepared. Yeah. And so I think one of the things is much harder conversations and deeper conversations about how do we run resilient social enterprises and how do we keep our leaders resilient in that. And then, and then as well, we're seeing so much money being flooded in philanthropy through, like the billionaires, Mackenzie Scott, the Gates divorce, how that's going to impact philanthropy. So that's another thing that's far more central in the conversation. And also the conversation around, in the New York Times, I don't know if it was last Sunday or maybe Saturday, but the conversation about, why billionaires like, Gates can't fix the problems they helped create. And, so kind of like this halo effect is being completely shattered, and just really unpacking what is there and how does this work? And not to say that there isn't tremendous gold and good, and yes, there is, but there's also, sort of an underbelly side of it that's sort of like in the light now that we have access to and able to ask some really hard questions and hopefully bring about tremendous shifts and change. I know so many people, particularly women of color, only because I focus upon women of color in a number of ways. And boy, they're really just, they're taking this opportunity, unprecedented opportunity to shine and bring in such leadership and brilliance into what philanthropy can look like. And I say, brava, and I cheer them on, and not cheering from the bleachers, like actively supporting it, right? But also on my own learning, massively on my own learning journey around all of it. So trends over the arc of the last, 7 years, and then the trends of the last 18 months, I have to keep my sea legs because it's constantly, it is shifting and shifting and shifting. And, and I was also coming into the space very much as a student. I had not everything, but a great deal to do with the fundraising work, but not necessarily understanding the context all those years ago. And so it's been my own education, on this journey as well. Wow. And trying to, one of the first tenets early on was first do no harm and understand I don't know what I don't know. And the main thing is just supporting the leaders who do know what's up with what's uniquely mine to do, which is around fundraising and helping support them.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Let's talk a little bit, if you wouldn't mind, too, about fundraising specifically, because a lot of times I would guess, not to generalize, but when people think about fundraising, they think about big donors, right? Big donors, big companies, big people standing up for cause. But can we talk a little bit, we're talking about marginalized communities, right? And the idea of empowering everyone, and people may have heard this term, democratization of philanthropy. How do you at Black Fox Philanthropy get the people that maybe think, I'm not a big donor, I could never give 100,000. I couldn't even give 1,000. Like, what do you do at Black Fox Philanthropy to guide the NGOs in terms of accessing people who want to make a difference, but maybe now at this phase of their life aren't that giant donor, but they can do something, so they feel empowered?
Yeah. So we work primarily with institutional funders. We will work with high net worth individuals. I know that term's not.
Yeah.
Until there's a better one. And so since impact's our primary driver, we don't necessarily work with the population that says, I'm a young lawyer. I'll have $100,000 to give at some point, but right now I have 1,000. I'm more interested, how do we mobilize the most significant amount of resources to get the job done now? And what does the horizon line look like 3 years from now? So it's not ours to do, to cultivate people who are coming into philanthropy and maybe their resources aren't where they will be someday. Personally, I do that. So it's not really through the firm. I mean, I've had my own journey. I have to say, far before I ever had the financial resources that I have to affect change. I was a big sister, a Special Olympics coach, volunteered at very special arts, doing fundraising, art auctions and things along those lines. So if you don't have the resources now, you still have so much to contribute, right? So, and what's amazing about that is when you do have financial resources, it's informed by your having been on the front lines, right? Being a big sister for 8 years informed, this is what those communities look like up close. Right. Or this is what it looks like for an NGO or a nonprofit to try to raise money through an event. Well, actually, that's something I would, but part of the volunteering was, okay, let's help you actually get there. So as I came into greater and greater financial resources, I was able to be far more strategic and effective in where my money was invested. Not that I didn't make early mistakes when the stakes were really low, but now everything I do philanthropically is really tight. And I have to say the greatest philanthropic vehicle I have is Black Fox Philanthropy. I mean, yes, I still fund certain initiatives, but the impact we have through a firm like this, a social enterprise like this, I can't begin to measure that in financial dollars, but also in peace of mind for nonprofit leaders to know that to a great extent, a lot of it's being handled.
Right. What's an example of one of your most favorite NGOs that you helped, and something that was just and it seemed insurmountable, but you made this incredible impact by being able to support them the way you do?
Oh my gosh, I have so many.
It's hard to pick, I'm sure, but
I know I'm being flooded because of so many. I mean, and I mean, we become friends. So
of course.
So beloved. So one organization comes to mind. So Teach United, and they work in East Africa, but also in rural areas of Colorado. But we met through. Actually, it was word of mouth, but I think originally through OC was how the person, then they were at the UN and said, you should talk to Black Fox. Anyway, they were literally going to lose, they were going to have to close their doors within 9 months. And the populations they were serving in East Africa and Colorado, I mean, it was vital that they continued their work. And so they just took a deep breath and Natalie, this is the largest check we have ever written outside of payroll. Wow. And they did a fundraising accelerator where we come in and we do a 6-month intensive, and we're effectively an outsourced development department. And so anyway, by the end of the engagement, they had 18 months of runway on funding, so much more in the pipeline. Wow. And then the next year, Heather Hyvish, the founder, she called, she's like, we just hit our first $1 million a year.
Wow, that's phenomenal.
Oh my gosh, we have to. Yeah, so we love that story, obviously. Sure. But there's so many other examples as well, and a lot of it's even intangible that we can't measure. The other thing too is where you have consultants say, I've raised $2 billion, and I'm like, well, the client raised $2 billion, right? But so we're there to support them in raising the billions of dollars. So I will own the quality of our team's work, the quality of what we do and how we show up in the work. But at the end of the day, we're a capacity building firm. We want our clients to be able to take all of that and go forward much more sustainably, strongly, more confident and able to secure greater funding.
Right. That's great. Well, everybody doing stuff in life. I've interviewed a lot of amazing people so far. I've had these great conversations. I don't even like to call it an interview. I've had these great conversations. And the one thing I love about everybody is that there is no ego in this and that we all need help. And so these organizations being able to reach out to you to say, we think we know quite a bit, but we still need some external advice. Still need some direction. We still need some support. And for you to be able to give that to them in a very tangible way that creates results is pretty powerful, I think.
Yeah, it's great. And I hear you on the humility. I think actually that's one of the things where I'll from time to time have to talk to clients and say, I love that the humility really comes through, but with all due respect, it's not about you, it's about the mission. So we really need you to go be up and out about your badassery. Right? Because they're just,
right.
So we are just like that. And that, so really one of the main reasons, impact, yes, but also another reason why we pivoted to global was, I referenced, going to breakfast, and being in that kind of world. And, oh my God, the level of humility and servant leadership.
Yeah.
And it was so theirs to do. The stakes were so incredibly high. The level of just brilliance combined with humility, servant leadership. It was also, of course, this is who we want to serve. These are the ones who are the real deal, boots on the ground, getting it done for all the right reasons. And the other thing too about the global space is if you're in it for ego or glory, it's way too hard. You get spit out pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So by the time we're meeting folks at Opportunity Collaboration or, Skoll World Forum, we're working with some of the most really extraordinary leaders out there because they've been able to be these incredible mission drivers in the face of profound odds against their success.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love it so much. And the last thing we'll talk a little bit about, because we will do a little call to action at the end too, and just some advice you'll give people. But you at Black Fox Philanthropy, you have a major code of ethics and different things, but you're also very much about inclusivity. That's a big driver in your company. Could you just talk a little bit about that? Because I know there's something you feel like sets you a little bit of apart in that area.
Yeah. So it was interesting because I was writing the Black Fox Code, which is really an internal document for our team members. And then one of the leadership team said this is actually should be public facing. And it was sort of a public declaration. Part of being a B Corp is our public declaration around all things, our real stake in the ground. But with the Black Fox Code, it was getting even more explicit about DEI, inclusivity, and more. But for many, many years, we've been working on, changing the face of philanthropy. We fund Black Fox Fellows, which are women of color funders. And we underwrite their going to Opportunity Collaboration. We had a call earlier with the fellows this year, just really like a half an hour before we hopped on the phone, on the call. And oh my God, they're just so extraordinary and great. And they're the face of philanthropy if they can, continue on their trajectory. And how can we support them so that they're in the upper echelons of these major foundations? And that would help guide, obviously, where the funding goes. So we're kind of going upstream a little bit with supporting some of these fellows, also Black Fox scholars, women of color, high school students. Actually, this is kind of like maybe it might be an ego thing, but it's kind of like giving scholarships to mini-me's, under-resourced.
That's okay. You can say that.
Be showing up as leaders in their communities, incredible agency, incredible hunger for impact. And I just wish I had support back then and direction. And so since 2014, we've been very intentional about supporting high school age girls who are already showing up and specifically around women and girls, supporting women and girls and leadership and writing college recommendations and scholarships and all that yum stuff. So, but as well, our hiring practices, we've been really fortunate that we've been able to hire some unbelievable women of color. And I feel sheepish even talking about we just hired the best of the best of the best. And of course, that means it's going to land as every shade. Even in being in this conversation, I feel a little awkward because it's I'm very conscious of the fact that I am a middle-aged white woman, right? And so there's like, there's this like discomfort and this like, oh, am I going to do it wrong? Am I going to step in it? But if I step in it, I step in it, and please correct me. And because that's how I'm going to learn. But yeah, just hiring the best of the best. And it's just landed that we've have a very inclusive team. So I don't know that it was as explicit or thought out prior to our actually writing a Black Fox code, where it's like, let's make this explicit. It's just our DNA. And I think that was a big part of our B Corp certification as well. It was such an easy lift because it was already our DNA from day one. So, but yes, we're far more explicit about it now because we want to serve as a model of, when it's done right. And I mentioned earlier, I don't take credit for how the operations are humming so beautifully, but the culture, I'll take a little bit of credit. I will take credit for that. The depth of connection of a virtual team and how we foster that among all of us, 20 team members across different geographies and time zones, is really, really powerful. But part of that is having explicit conversations about race and what it means in philanthropy, what it means in our lives. Our book clubs have always been around dismantling racism and things along those lines. So I think so many organizations were also operating this way, but we sort of had to be far more public facing and explicit about what we are doing and how we are thinking about things and the actions we're taking to advance things. And actually, even though I've been doing this since 2014, my real wake-up call, I would say, was 2016, 15 or 16. I was at a Women Moving Millions Summit. And Vanessa Daniel, who runs a Groundswell Fund from the state, she said, if you are not actively working to dismantle racism in this country, you're on the moving sidewalk contributing to it.
Yeah, that's powerful.
I fancy myself a good person, and I am totally on the moving sidewalk.
Yeah.
So that was a big wake up call, to just show up.
Wow.
Better, more, differently.
Yeah, that's very powerful. And you know what? I'll say we have to have uncomfortable conversations because that's where change comes from. And so I know it can feel a little challenging sometimes, but the truth is that, everybody has life experience and something to bring and something to share. And if we can come to things with an open mind and understand that it might be a little uncomfortable, but this is just how we're going to affect change, then it's okay. And then back to your comment around a mini-me, I love that because it's not really like ego. I think it's about being a mentor, and when you grow up the way we did and you didn't really have a mentor, it's important to feel like, can I impart some of those challenges and experiences on others? So back to that idea of eliminating suffering, if we can save somebody from those experiences, we will do that as a mentor.
Yeah, 100%. And I like the term I've heard sponsor and also champion. So mentoring is one thing, but being a champion is actually going that,
extra
those miles to make those introductions, to pave the way for a fellowship or whatever the case may be.
I love that.
I hope that I can become more and more of a champion. I know I am in many people's lives, but the more, the better.
Yeah, well, you certainly are. I mean, it's just no question for me. And for anyone who wants to know more about Natalie, there's a lot written about you. There's information on your website. We'll talk about that at the very end here. And I encourage people to really follow what you're doing because you are creating a really unique model that I think is proving itself to have, not to use this term so often, but it really is making real impact. And that's what we want to see. We don't want it to just be good washing, as I like to call it, where people are, they're, what do you really stand for? And how can you really turn that into change, fundamental change, which you're doing, which I think is so cool. So we're going to do something different. This is the first time that I am going to be doing. And so putting you a little bit on the spot here because you weren't aware of this.
Okay.
I'm getting feedback from I'm so grateful for all of our listeners and our watchers that are learning about amazing people like you, Natalie. And so we kind of were like, would like to know some fun, different things about these people besides just all this cool stuff they're doing. So we're going to do our own little series of rapid fire questions here with, they don't need to be elaborate answers, kind of, but kind of just get to know you a little bit, some fun things that you might not have thought about sharing. And if something is too awkward or odd, or you don't know the answer, just say pass and we can, that'll be fine. So you ready? Some of them are specific around purpose. Some of them are specific around culture. And so here we go.
Awesome.
Rapid fire, a world on purpose. First time we're doing this. I'm so happy. Thank you for being open to it. All right. What was the most memorable act of kindness that someone did for you or you did for someone else?
Ooh, gosh. So what comes to mind is in 2017, I had severe PTSD after leaving my marriage. And a friend of mine came over and I was down to like 108, 109 pounds. And she saw me and she just immediately like hit the kitchen and started cooking up a storm. And so that's the first thing that came to mind. It just so touched my heart. And it was then like all my friends just kind of came and circled the wagons around me and took care of me.
Oh, I love it. You were in need. I think that's so great. Yeah, but when you're vulnerable and
not my normal home base. So
I was just going to say that not letting people do for you thing, probably.
It's my spiritual homework assignment. I've gotten better at it.
I love that. Okay. Second question. Who is your purpose hero, known or unknown?
Ooh, whether they know it or not.
Yeah. Whether they're a known name or if it's somebody was like someone in your neighborhood, who would be a purpose hero to you? She should be wildly famous. Karen Ansara. Oh, yeah. Founded New England International Donors. She has a fierce focus upon Haiti and more, but who she is as a human, I swear she is an angel sent to earth to help enlighten all of us. She is one of my favorite humans and absolutely my impact hero. That's great. Yeah, I love her too. She's amazing. All right. What is the top thing that inspires you to get up every day? I cannot wait to have my coffee and do my meditation. I love that. Okay, cool. If you had a theme song for your life, what would that theme song be? This Girl Is on Fire. And I only mentioned it because for my birthday, one of the team members made me a Spotify playlist and it's the first song. So every time I hit it, I've been listening to it a lot as I'm unpacking in my new Boston place. Oh, I love it. That's great. Yes. I have found that as I've gotten older, my theme song has changed also. Well, it could evolve, right? Evolve. Yeah. Okay. What is the one thing that you think makes people fall in love? Chemistry. I would say it has to be chemistry first and then, the rest after, but it has to be that like that initial spark. Yes. Okay. I love it. Couple more. What is the one thing you do to stay on course or positive when things get tough? Meditation. Mm-hmm. Friends. I did an SOS flare among my friends back in January. It's like a 9 a.m. SOS flare and 3 p.m. we had a virtual women's circle. And it was so profound and so powerful. And I had never done an SOS spiritual women's circle before. But wow, it was amazing. That is so cool. I'm going to have to call you because I had never heard of an SOS flare before. No, but I'd never even heard of it. I just made it up, but I needed my people. And for these people, just, we all have busy lives and just to drop everything was amazing. Well, I think that's a new thing. You're going to have to start SOS flare. I'm buying into it. I love it. Okay, a couple more. What is one culturally influenced food you would like to try, being the world traveler that you are? Culturally influenced food. Gosh, I've had the benefit of trying too many things. Yeah, nothing's really coming to mind. I'm thinking more cultural foods that I won't try. Oh, how about what's one that you love? That I love cultural? Oh gosh, anything curry. Okay. Oh, I do too. It's delish. Okay. 2 more questions. If you could sum up what living a purpose-driven life or what it means to live in the world on purpose in one word, what do you think that word would be?
Joy.
That's exactly what I was thinking, because watching you talk about it, you just absolutely exude joy.
Oh, joy. I actually have on my phone, Joy Addict. And getting to work in this space is profoundly joyful. Getting to serve these people and getting to be in community with our team is so joyful. Getting to even have a conversation with you, and thank you for making it a conversation.
You're welcome. I'm trying. Hopefully I'm doing that.
It's so joyful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would 100% agree.
Yeah, this work can be a body snatcher, and especially, the long hours and so much sacrifice. Without that joy, it's not sustainable.
Yeah, I would totally agree with you. I'm right there with you, sister. Okay, last two questions. What is your favorite city in the world and why? Paris,
France. Because it's Paris, France. I mean, come on. I don't need to explain that.
No, that's pretty good. And then the last one is, what's a fun fact about you that people might not know?
I am an ordained minister. I can marry people to each other.
That is so cool. Okay. So we're adding that to your resume.
That should be on my resume. That should be on my LinkedIn.
It should be. Have you married any of your sidebar, any of your clients?
No, it was just, you know what, you guys, it was literally like it's called the Universal Church. It takes less than 60 minutes to register, and you're an ordained minister.
I love it. I think that's so
It
great.
is hilarious. But yeah, if I'm ever called upon, it would be an honor to get to marry people who are in love with each other.
Well, going back to OC, if you go back and watch Jorian and Topher's interview, they said that out of OC, unexpectedly, there have been marriages that have come out of it. So maybe you can,
I believe it.
Yeah, maybe you can be on site at the next one and just do a few.
Yeah, I'll bring my credentials.
Perfect. Well, yeah, exactly.
I want to ask, what's a fun fact, non-Googleable thing about you that people wouldn't guess?
Me?
Yeah.
God, what are you turning the tables on me for?
Yeah, 100%.
I won't do it here, and I can't do it when it's on demand. I have to do it when nobody is paying attention and randomly, but I do really good impressions.
Ah, okay.
I do Elvis, Ethel Merman, George Bush Sr., Ronald Reagan. I do, remember Lily Tomlin's character on Sesame Street who sat in the big chair, Edith Ann, talking about her dog Buster, and or Ruthie Ann, I think, or something.
Ruthie Ann, yeah.
Yeah.
Ruthie, yes. Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks
That
for
is
asking.
awesome. That was unexpected.
I was, but that's what this whole show's about. I'm working on trying to make this more conversational. I've never done this before, but my dream is to shine a light and just really help share these incredible stories of people like you. And so I'm improving as I go. I'm open to hearing people's feedback, and it was so much fun talking to you, Natalie. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for inviting me.
Oh, you're welcome. And one last thing we're going to do before we tell people where they can find you and hopefully learn how to engage you is if you had a call to action for people learning about purpose, impact, it could be specific to an organization. It could just be words of wisdom. What would that be?
Yeah. So actually at the Skoll World Forum, a session I did for them in April was from burnout to bliss. This work is such a body snatcher, and burnout is rampant. And so my advice is to protect the asset, and you are the asset. And what that looks like, I can get into that on another time, but taking care of yourself helps take care of humanity, the planet, and more, but it has to start with you. Because we don't need burnout leaders.
100,000%. I agree with you, because that's a very common, unfortunate byproduct of doing purpose-driven work is forgetting about yourself, and you can't help anyone until you help yourself.
The work's never done. The stakes are so high. And so it's very easy to burn yourself out and be of little use of anyone. But really, it's, this is your one precious wild life. Like, take good care of it.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
So Natalie from Fox Philanthropy, you're a lot more than just the founder and CEO of that. There's going to be a lot more people learning about you in the future. Please tell people where they can find you so they can learn more about you, and also if they are interested, how to engage you in the company.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. So actually, I fly under the radar for the most part. So yes, there's a lot written about me. So I guess Google, but really just Black Fox Philanthropy. If I'm public facing or up and out in any way, it's really in service to how can we serve more clients in the world. So yes, I feel a little sheepish, like, oh, well, you can read all about me on my website, and it's called NatalieRekstad.com, which does not exist. So really just Black Fox Philanthropy. Come visit us. We're open source. We publish Black Fox Brief every Tuesday, which our curator Leah is amazing. I mean, there's so much we do. So just hop on the website and click on open source, and you'll see a bunch of other things. I know where else you can find me. So my daughter and I created a children's book called The Secret Adventures of Anonymous.
What?
It's reaching 100 million kids worldwide through a social emotional learning curriculum through Think Equal out of the UK, which is part of like a UN initiative, and the Pope, the Dalai Lama, Meryl Streep. It's like amazing, this whole initiative globally to teach kids, early years kids, about social emotional learning so that we can bring about peace in one generation. So The Secret Adventures of Anonymous.
Okay, you held that out on me. We didn't
talk about
that.
It's kind of a side. No, it's just kind of a side thing. So, and I no longer sell the books because the little mouse has done what it's meant to do in the world. So I'm just giving them away at this point.
Oh, I love it. Okay, so we will make sure that we have a link to that as well on your episode page on A World on Purpose website. And lastly, if people though wanted to actually get in touch with you, could they through LinkedIn, through emailing on the website?
Through LinkedIn, I check it probably once a week. So yeah, definitely LinkedIn. I'm easy to find. I have not a very common name. Yep. And I would love for people to reach out. And yes, and especially if you're in the impact space and I can support you, you can support, our team can support you. It would be really an honor. And just anyone who's listening to your podcast, I know are hungry for impact also. So yes. Yes, please come find us, come find me, and we'd be happy to serve you, your mission, whatever you need to move your work forward in the world.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And again, everyone, all of Natalie's information will be, as you know, on A World on Purpose's website on her episode page. We'll have links to everything. So you'll be able to find her in this episode easily there. And with that, I'm very sad to have to wrap this. I could talk to you for hours. Natalie, thank you so much for being here today. And I can't wait to see you again in person, hopefully soon.
The DR, hopefully.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. All right. Super. Thanks, Alyssa.
You're welcome. And thanks everybody for coming back. We always love to give you all this great information, turning into A World on Purpose. Please be sure to listen to all the past episodes and all these incredible people that are in the same ecosystem with me and Natalie. And thank you just from the bottom of my heart for even giving this show a chance. I am doing this, living my own dream for the first time, trying to bring you these incredible stories. So thank you for tuning into A World on Purpose. We will see you again soon. I'm your host, Alyssa Fisher-Harris, and have a glorious day, night, and afternoon. Thank you for taking this journey into A World on Purpose with our incredible guests. To learn more about our amazing guests and their inspiring purpose-driven work, please go to aworldonpurpose.com. Don't forget to look at our call to action of the week to mobilize your desire for purpose into action. A World on Purpose can be found on Apple Podcasts and all the major podcast platforms, and the video version can be found on YouTube. If what you heard today inspires you, please write a review and like and share on the platform of your choice. We'd love to also hear from you and learn your pivot to purpose and the meaningful work that you do that lifts humanity. Send your stories to info@aworldonpurpose.com. I'd like to thank our World on Purpose team for making this show a reality. Once again, I'm your host, Alyssa Fisher-Harris. Thank you for tuning in to A World on Purpose. I look forward to seeing you soon.